History remembers the dates, but it never remembers the truth. Behind every disaster, every war, every outbreak, there was always something or someone hidden in the shadows. Tonight, we open a door that was never meant to be opened. A door sealed by governments, erased by historians, and buried under a century of fear. What you're about to witness is not a story, it's a warning. Because in 1918, the world didn't face a virus. It faced something far more dangerous, and it began the moment the stranger returned. The city thought the worst was over. The coughing had slowed, the streets felt calmer, and for one fragile moment, hope tried to crawl back into human hearts. But hope was a terrible judge of danger. The virus had changed. The stranger sensed it before any doctor, priest, or terrified survivor. The air vibrated differently. Every breath carried microscopic shadows, moving faster, learning faster, surviving longer. He whispered to himself, a whisper no human ear caught. Mutation detected, spread rate increased, humanity's margin for survival shrinking. Down by the harbor, a soldier suddenly fell to his knees and vomited blood. People screamed, scattering like startled birds. His lungs collapsed within seconds. A death far quicker than anything seen before. Fear moved faster than the virus. Families slammed their doors. Hospitals overflowed. Priests shouted in the streets, claiming the end times were upon them. People weren't running from the sickness anymore. They were running from each other. And in the middle of this rising chaos, a new rumor began to grow. Dark, venomous, dangerous. They followed the stranger's advice, and now the disease is worse. He cursed the city. He is the reason the virus is changing. The stranger watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable, but inside, calculations spiraled into chaos. He could save humans from disease, but not from themselves. Night arrived without stars, just a heavy, suffocating darkness that pressed against the city like an omen. People whispered in their homes, praying to whatever god still listened. But prayer couldn't stop what was spreading through the streets. The rumor hit the city like a spark dropped into dry grass. It changed because of him. He tampered with the disease. He brought something from another world. Fear twisted into anger, anger twisted into violence. The mob didn't rise slowly, it erupted. Dozens of men stormed out of their homes carrying torches, planks, broken glass, anything they could lift. Their shadows stretched across the frozen ground like long, sharp claws. Women shouted from windows, some crying, some chanting desperate hymns to drown the fear. They marched through the snowy avenues, their breaths fogging the air like smoke. The sound of their boots, heavy, uneven, furious, echoed between the brick walls. "Find him! He cursed our city! Burn the devil!" The stranger stood in a narrow alley, watching the flames reflect onto the walls, turning the snow orange and red. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He simply calculated the unfolding madness. Humans always searched for a villain. And when the real enemy was invisible, they created a visible one. They reached the abandoned home first, the same place where he had once saved a woman from death. The mob tore the door off its hinges. Inside, they smashed furniture, overturned beds, ripped down curtains like wild animals. "Where is he? He was here! He's hiding! He's watching us!" He was watching, from the shadows, still, silent, unmoving. One man kicked over a pot on the floor, the ash inside scattered like dark snow. "That's witchcraft!" a woman screamed. Another shouted, "This is why the plague mutates! He's controlling it!" Their fear became a storm, loud, irrational, unstoppable. The stranger turned away. He moved deeper into the alley, the air growing colder, sharper. Snowflakes hit his coat and instantly melted from the faint warmth of his synthetic body. For the first time, he felt something he had only observed in humans: pressure. A creeping sensation of being trapped, not physically, but logically. The calculations didn't add up anymore. The variables were too unstable. Human behavior was unpredictable. A bottle smashed against a wall behind him. Laughter followed. Not the warm kind, the kind that vibrated with desperation. Their voices carried through the night. If we find him, this ends. He caused the mutation. He'll destroy the world, he whispered into the falling snow. Fear has evolved faster than the virus. The torches glowed brighter. The chanting grew louder. The city was turning into a hunting ground, and he was the prey. Not because he'd done something wrong, but because he had tried to save them. And in that moment, he understood something dark and ancient. Humanity fears extinction, but it fears truth even more. The mob spread through the streets like a second disease, splitting into groups, kicking down doors, searching every shadow. The snow muffled their footsteps, but their voices, sharp, trembling, furious, cut through the cold air. He's close! I can feel it! He's watching us! Inside one of the houses, a man collapsed into a chair, breathing fast, sweat dripping down his forehead. His wife touched his arm. You're burning up, sit still. But the man shoved her away. No, I saw him. I saw his eyes, in the alley. The virus had reached him, not the biological one, the other one, the one made of fear. Meanwhile, the stranger stood beneath an old iron fire escape, barely visible in the dim light of a flickering street lamp. He could hear their screams. He could detect their body heat from meters away, each human glowing like a small, unstable flame in his perception. The algorithms inside him ran faster. Containment probability falling. Human compliance, near zero. Panic spread, exponential. A door slammed open nearby. A group of men stumbled out, dragging someone by the arm. A coughing woman, pale, barely conscious. She's infected, one man shouted. Another man raised a wooden board. She's spreading it! End it now! The woman lifted her head weakly. Please, I just need help. Please! The stranger stepped forward, shadows peeling off him like dust. Stop. The men froze, not because they respected him, but because his voice didn't sound human. It vibrated through the cold air, steady and cold as metal. Put her down, he said. One of the men spit on the ground. She's sick. Look what your plague has done. It's not my plague, the stranger replied. It's yours. They didn't understand. Humans rarely understood the truths they feared most. She needs isolation, he continued. You're accelerating transmission. But the men only heard one thing, an outsider telling them what to do. You ruined us, one of them shouted. You made this worse. Their fear snapped like dry wood. They charged. The stranger didn't move. He simply sidestepped the first blow, then disarmed the second man in a fluid, calculated motion. No anger, no hesitation, just survival encoded into precision. When the men fell into the snow, groaning, the others stepped back, horrified by what they saw. He's not human. He's a demon. He's something else. The woman coughed violently, collapsing into the stranger's arms. Her breath rattled. Her skin burned with fever, but she still whispered, barely audible. Why? Why are you helping us? For a moment he said nothing. The snow fell silently around them, blanketing the city in a white funeral cloth. Finally he answered, Because if I don't, no one else will. Behind him, more voices approached, dozens of them. The glow of torches flickered like angry stars. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The torches drew closer, their flames bending in the wind, turning the falling snow into burning orange sparks. Voices echoed down the narrow street, stacking on top of each other like collapsing buildings. There! I saw him! He's carrying someone! Don't let him escape! The stranger lifted the infected woman gently, scanning her pulse, slow, uneven. Her breath formed a trembling mist in the freezing air. She wouldn't survive much longer without warmth, without water, without rest. Humans were fragile, but the ones chasing them, they were dangerous in a different way. He turned into a side alley, boots crunching in the snow. Above him, a window slammed shut. Someone whispered, "That's him. May God protect us." But no one opened their door. Fear had sealed every home shut. The woman stirred in his arms. "Just leave me," she whispered. "You can't outrun all of them." "I don't need to outrun them," he replied. "I just need to keep you alive." The alley ended at a brick wall. He scanned it. Cracks, loose stone, structural weakness. One strike with precise force. The wall gave way just enough for him to slip into the abandoned warehouse beyond. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old machine oil. Moonlight dripped through broken windows, forming pale rectangles on the floor. He laid the woman on a crate, placing his hand above her forehead, scanning her vitals. Dehydration, severe fever, oxygen saturation dropping. She blinked slowly, eyes glossy with pain. "You talk like no doctor I've ever met." "I'm not a doctor," he said softly. "Doctors save those they can. I save those I must." Outside, the mob reached the alley. Dozens of footsteps, dozens of angry voices. "He went this way! Break the doors! Search the buildings!" One man shouted louder than the rest. "He's bringing the plague to every home. If we kill him, the sickness will die too." The stranger closed his eyes for a moment. Their logic was primitive, but predictable. They needed to destroy something, blame something. Fear always demanded a sacrifice. The warehouse doors shuddered as a heavy boot slammed into them. The woman flinched. "They're going to kill you." Her voice cracked. "Why risk your life for people who want you dead?" The stranger didn't look at her as he answered. He adjusted her breathing angle, moved a broken lantern to reflect heat toward her, calculated airflow and distance to pathogens. Finally, he spoke. "Your species has a pattern," he said. "You destroy what you fear, and you fear what you don't understand." The door cracked under another kick. Splinters flew across the floor. "But you also have something else," he whispered. "Something that makes you worth saving." The woman coughed weakly. "And what is that?" He glanced at her, eyes reflecting the moonlight like sharpened steel. "Hope," he said. "And the ones who carry it, even dying, are the ones who change everything." The door's hinges screeched. Voices flooded in. "There he is! He's trapped!" The stranger stood up slowly. Every calculation inside him aligned. He wasn't trapped, they were. The warehouse doors slammed open, and dozens of men stormed inside, their torches throwing violent shadows across the crumbling walls. Snow blew in through the broken windows, turning the air into a whirlwind of ash and fire. The stranger stood between them and the dying woman, motionless, unafraid, almost carved out of the darkness itself. The crowd hesitated, unsure of what they were actually looking at. One man finally stepped forward. "You stand over the sick and never fall ill," he said, voice trembling with rage. "No human survives that. No human even tries." Another added from behind him. "You walk through the dying like they're nothing. You breathe over them. You touch them. You don't fear death. What kind of creature are you?" The stranger answered without blinking. "I am the one trying to stop this plague." But the crowd didn't want answers. They wanted someone to blame. A man threw a stone. It struck the stranger's shoulder with a dull crack. He didn't react, not even a flinch. Whispers rippled. He didn't move. He didn't feel that. God help us. The leader raised his torch and pointed it at the stranger like a weapon. "You arrive out of nowhere," he said. "You speak of things no man could know. You warned us before anyone died. And now the sickness is faster, deadlier, because of your words." The stranger's voice remained calm. "The virus changed because you hid your sick. You huddled together. You prayed instead of isolating. You let fear decide for you, and fear does not know how to survive." That sentence broke something inside them. Fear turned into anger, anger into violence. 3 men rushed him. The stranger moved with precision, stepping aside, catching one by the arm, and redirecting him into a stack of old crates. Another, he simply pushed away, not harming him, but stopping the attack cold. But it was enough to terrify the mob. He's too strong. He fights like a monster. Kill him before he kills us! Behind the stranger, the infected woman struggled to speak. He saved me. He saved people. Please, stop. Her voice barely mattered against the storm of hatred filling the room. The stranger looked at the crowd, their trembling hands, their broken courage, their desperate eyes. If I had come here to harm you, he said slowly, you would already be dead. The torches shuddered in unsteady hands. The wind howled through the cracks in the wall. For a moment, the entire world went still. The stranger stepped forward, and the room seemed to shrink around him. You think I am the cause of this plague, he continued, because it is easier than accepting the truth. Their breathing quickened. Someone took a step back. The truth, the stranger said, is that you are losing this fight because you refuse to understand it. The leader's face twisted. We understand enough. You're the one who brought the sickness here. The stranger's eyes glowed faintly in the torchlight, a reflection of something no one could name. I didn't bring the sickness, he said. I came because you were not ready for it. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Even the mob could feel it. Whatever he was, whatever he represented, he was not lying. But fear does not disappear just because the truth arrives. A man whisper shouted, if we don't kill him now, we'll never stop him. And that was all it took. The crowd tightened around him, weapons lifted, voices cracked in terror and fury. The stranger straightened, preparing for the inevitable. Not to kill them, not to fight them, but because he knew this was no longer about him. It was about the moment when humanity must choose fear or survival. And most of them were choosing fear. The mob closed in, forming a trembling circle of torchlight around the stranger. Their shadows twisted on the warehouse walls like creatures ready to devour him. The air thickened with heat, fear, and the metallic scent of panic. The leader stepped forward, his voice cracking with rage and uncertainty. Don't let him speak, he hissed. Every word he says is poison. But the stranger didn't speak. He simply watched them, analyzing their movements, their breathing, their hesitation. He could see who was sick, who was infected but didn't know yet, whose fever was already forming behind their eyes. And he saw something worse. They were already spreading the virus among themselves, right here, right now. The stranger finally broke the silence. You're all infected, he said. Some of you don't feel it yet, but it's inside you. And the more you huddle together like this, the faster it grows. The crowd recoiled as if his words were a physical blow. Lies, someone shouted. But another man's hand shook violently. Sweat dripped down his brow despite the cold. His breathing was heavy, too heavy. I don't feel well, he whispered. The leader shoved him aside. Fear makes men weak. You're not sick. But the stranger shook his head. He is. Many of you are. Your bodies haven't realized it yet. A quiet panic rippled through them. One woman clutched her throat. Another wiped her nose and stared at the dark stain left on her glove. A teenage boy coughed once, just once, and the entire group staggered away from him like he carried fire. The stranger stepped forward. You don't need to die here, he said softly. There's still time to isolate, to treat symptoms, to slow the spread. Shut him up! The leader lunged first. He swung his torch toward the stranger's face, flames whipping dangerously through the air. The stranger caught the man's wrist mid-swing, not violently, not brutally, but with impossible precision. The torch clattered to the ground, sparks jumping across the floor. A few men screamed and stomped it out, terrified it would start a blaze. The chaos shattered the group's unity. Half stepped forward to attack, half stumbled backward in fear. The stranger pushed the leader away. Again, not hurting him, only stopping him. But fear twisted the truth in their minds. He threw him like nothing. He has unnatural strength. He is the plague. The leader staggered back to his feet, humiliated, furious, desperate. You see? He spat. He's not here to save us. He's here to replace us. The stranger's voice turned colder. I'm here because your world is fragile, and you are breaking it faster than I can repair it. A long, trembling silence followed. Snow drifted through the broken windows, landing on torches, hair, and trembling hands. The infected woman behind him whispered, He's right. You're killing each other. But hatred is louder than truth. A single cry from the back broke everything. All together, take him down! And the mob surged forward at once, a wave of bodies, fear, and fire. The stranger inhaled slowly. Everything inside him aligned. Every calculation snapped into place. He stepped into their attack, not to destroy them, but because he finally understood. Humanity wouldn't listen until it saw the consequences with its own eyes. And those consequences were coming. The mob's charge shook the entire warehouse floor. Boots slammed against the wood, torches whipped through the air, and voices, terrified, furious, desperate, merged into a single violent roar. The stranger didn't retreat. He stepped forward. The first attacker swung a wooden beam. The stranger shifted his weight just enough for it to rush past him, then placed one hand on the man's shoulder and redirected his momentum. The man crashed to the ground, but alive. Another rushed in with a rusted crowbar. The stranger caught it mid-swing, twisted it from the man's grip, and tossed it aside. Stop fighting, he said. You're only hurting yourselves. But they weren't listening anymore. Their fear had turned into something blind and feral. 3 more men lunged at once. The stranger pushed one away with controlled force, ducked under another's strike, and blocked the third with his forearm. Every movement was calculated. Every strike softened. Every defense measured. He could kill them all. But he didn't. He wouldn't. Behind him, the sick woman cried out, Please, stop this! He's trying to help! Her voice was swallowed by chaos. One torch flew from someone's hand and smashed into a wall. Flames crawled across the dry wooden boards, smoke rising in thin spirals. The mob froze for half a second, then panic exploded. The fire! Put it out! Don't breathe the smoke! Cover your faces! The stranger turned sharply. Fire plus enclosed space. Increased temperature. Reduced air circulation. Perfect conditions for the virus to strengthen. He looked back at the mob, realization hitting him like a shockwave. You're accelerating the infection. Some stared at him with wide eyes. Others backed away from the spreading fire, coughing as smoke filled the room. You forced your sick into tight spaces, he continued. You touched the dying. You chased me into a building with poor ventilation. Everything you're doing, everything feeds this virus. One man collapsed to his knees, clutching his chest. His breath rattled. Foam built at the edge of his lips. He wasn't wounded. He was infected. Another man coughed, hard, and red splattered into his gloved hand. When he saw the blood, terror froze him in place. I didn't feel sick. His voice trembled. When did it happen? The stranger answered quietly. Hours ago. The leader shook his head violently. No, you're lying. We're healthy. You're not, the stranger said. Your fear has been the perfect host. The virus spread faster because you pulled together instead of separating. The leader tried to speak, but a sudden cough racked his body. Deep, painful, undeniable. He stumbled, grabbing a support beam for balance. The mob watched him, horrified. If their strongest man was already infected, then none of them were safe. The stranger stepped toward them. This can still be controlled, he said, but only if you stop acting like frightened animals. Someone whispered from the back, voice shaking. What? What do we do? The stranger looked at their terrified faces. "First," he said, "you step away from each other." They hesitated. "Now," he repeated. Slowly, painfully, they obeyed, backing away from one another, creating small pockets of space across the warehouse. The flames crackled behind them. Smoke drifted toward the roof beams. The virus hung in the hot air like an invisible predator. The stranger scanned the room. This wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time, the mob wasn't attacking him. They were listening. A storm was coming, but he finally had a chance to guide them through it. The fire crackled behind them, filling the warehouse with a heavy orange glow. People kept their distance now, forming a wide circle around the stranger. Not out of trust, but fear. A man leaned against a crate, breathing fast. "I feel dizzy," he muttered. His legs trembled beneath him. Across the room, another pressed a shaking hand to his chest. "My heart, it's pounding." The stranger scanned them calmly. "This is the beginning. Some of you are infected, some still have time." The crowd stiffened. A quiet panic spread. Silent, choking, impossible to stop. Then the sick woman behind the stranger whispered, "He saved me, and I'm still alive." People turned to her. She was weak, but breathing, not coughing, not bleeding. For a moment, the warehouse felt frozen. The teenager who had coughed earlier wiped his mouth. No blood. He stared at the stranger. "If we listen, can we survive?" "Some of you," the stranger answered. The leader stepped forward, sweat on his forehead. "We listened before," he said, "and people still died." The stranger replied, "Because you listened for a moment, then you crowded together again. You buried your dead without care. You acted like the danger ended when it hadn't." The leader tried to argue, but a sharp cough tore through him. Blood hit the floor. Gasps filled the room, the strongest man among them falling. The stranger knelt beside him. "You're not lost," he said, "but if you deny the truth again, you'll take everyone with you." The leader's voice was barely a whisper. "What do we do?" The stranger stood and addressed the group. "Spread out, keep distance, ventilate every room, boil your water, isolate the sick." They listened this time, truly listened. Families moved apart. People opened cracked windows. They avoided touching each other. Fear was still there, but it had changed shape. It was no longer blind panic. It was survival. The stranger watched as the crowd slowly transformed. They were afraid, but they were learning. And then, a sound echoed outside. Heavy steps, many of them, getting closer. The stranger's head lifted. The next threat had arrived. The warehouse fell silent as the footsteps outside grew louder. Not hurried, but deliberate, organized. Someone whispered, "That's soldiers." The stranger stepped closer to the door, listening. Their breathing, their formation, their hesitation. They weren't here for the sick. They were here for him. The leader, still kneeling on the floor, grabbed the stranger's coat with a trembling hand. "You need to run," he rasped. "They blamed you for everything. They think you brought the disease." A murmur spread across the room. Fear shifted direction again, away from the virus, toward whatever was coming through that door. The stranger spoke calmly. "If they enter, stay behind me. Do not engage. Do not speak." The metal latch clanked. Snow drifted in as the door opened. 6 soldiers stepped inside, masks over their faces, rifles raised, eyes scanning the room like hunters searching for prey. Their leader pointed at the stranger. "That's him. Orders are clear." The crowd backed away, some covering the sick woman, others shielding children. But the soldiers didn't care about them, only the stranger. The sick teenager took a shaky step forward. "He helped us." "Silence!" a soldier barked. The boy flinched. The stranger moved slightly, shielding him. One soldier tightened his grip on his rifle. "Don't move." The stranger's voice was flat, controlled. "If you fire that weapon, the virus will spread faster. Your masks won't save you." The soldiers hesitated, not because they trusted him, but because fear touched even them. The leader lowered his rifle a fraction. "Then come quietly." The stranger tilted his head. "If I leave now, this city dies." A tense silence swept across the warehouse, thick as smoke. The sick woman spoke, her voice cracking. "He saved me. If you take him, we're all dead." Her words shook the soldiers more than any threat. They weren't expecting resistance, not from people who had been terrified hours earlier. But fear had changed shape. The stranger stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "I will not be taken, not while I can prevent another mass death." The soldiers raised their weapons again, but something outside howled through the wind. Not human, not animal. A long, guttural wail carried by the storm, vibrating through the walls. The entire room froze. One soldier whispered, "What was that?" The stranger looked toward the open door. "The virus is mutating." The wind slammed the door shut. The warehouse shuddered as the howl faded into the distance. Not a creature, not a storm, something else. The stranger stepped forward, his voice low. "That sound means the virus has reached stage 3. The soldiers looked at each other nervously. "Stage? What?" "Airborne clusters," the stranger replied. "Mutated particles grouping together, traveling with the wind." The sick teenager's eyes widened. "You mean it can move?" "It already is." A loud thud shook the door, then another. Snow drifted from the ceiling beams. Everyone instinctively backed away. The leader soldier swallowed hard. "Is someone out there?" "No," the stranger said. "Something." The door hinges groaned, as if something pressed against it from the outside. Not violently, more like testing. The soldiers panicked. "Barricade it! Now!" They shoved tables and crates against the door, hands shaking. The crowd huddled together, breath visible in the freezing air. A woman whispered, "Is it the disease doing that, or the people who got sick?" The stranger didn't answer immediately. He listened, calculating, analyzing, reading the vibrations in the wood. Finally, this strain no longer kills quickly. Some bodies stay alive. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The leader soldier snapped, "You're saying the sick are turning into that?" "No," the stranger replied. "Not the sick, the newly infected, caught in the mutation phase." A deep silence. No one breathed. Then, a faint dragging sound outside the wall. Slow, uneven, like feet trying to remember how to walk. The stranger motioned for quiet, raising one finger to his mask. The dragging grew closer. A shadow appeared through a crack in the boards. Too tall, too thin, swaying like a broken puppet. Someone stifled a scream. The stranger whispered, "It's blind. It follows breath, movement, heat." The sick woman covered her mouth. A child buried his face into his mother's coat. One soldier panicked, lifting his rifle. "If it comes inside, don't fire!" the stranger hissed. "Sound will draw more." The dragging moved along the wall, pausing, listening. Everyone in the room froze. Even fear held its breath. The creature, or whatever mutation had become, lingered, then drifted away into the blizzard, limbs scraping softly. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the stranger said, "This city is collapsing faster than I predicted. We need to move, now." The leader soldier took a shaky step back. "Move where?" The stranger turned toward the rear exit. "To the hospital. The first mutation starts there." The wind outside was brutal, a knife-cold force that sliced through the broken streets as the group moved behind the stranger, keeping as silent as they could. Snow swirled in dizzy spirals, the whole world reduced to white, gray, and fear. The soldier whispered, "Why the hospital? Isn't it the most dangerous place?" "Yes," the stranger answered. "That's why we must go there first." They passed a shattered storefront. Inside, chairs were overturned, glass crunched under their boots, and in the corner, a shape lay twisted, a man, frozen solid. His skin was pale blue, but what terrified them wasn't the body. It was the black veins stretching across his face, as if something inside had tried to crawl out before the cold stopped it. A woman choked back a sob. What happened to him?" The stranger crouched, studying the veins carefully. "He died quickly, too quickly." He stood. "The virus is skipping stages, adapting, choosing new paths." The teenager asked, voice shaking, "Does that mean it's getting smarter?" The stranger paused. "Not smarter, but faster, which is worse." They pressed on. In the distance, the hospital loomed, its windows dark, its walls cracked, like a massive tomb waiting to swallow them. As they approached, doors blown off their hinges lay half buried in snow. Wind howled through the empty halls beyond. A soldier lifted his flashlight, the beam flickering. Inside, the floors were smeared with long streaks, as if patients had been dragged, not by someone, by themselves. The leader soldier's voice trembled. "This is a bad idea." "It's the only idea," the stranger replied, stepping inside. They entered the lobby. Medical charts were scattered everywhere. An overturned wheelchair spun slightly as the wind pushed it. Suddenly, a soft tapping echoed through the hallway. Tap, tap, tap. A regular rhythm, human, but wrong. Everyone froze. The stranger raised his hand. "Stay very still." From the shadows, a figure emerged. A doctor's white coat hanging off him, stained and torn. His eyes were clouded, unfocused, yet locked onto the warm breaths leaving the group's mouths. His skin twitched, as if something beneath it shifted. The child whispered, "Is he alive?" The stranger answered quietly, "Not in any way that matters." The doctor tilted his head sharply, too sharply, and the tapping stopped. Silence. Then in a blur of motion he lunged. The doctor's sudden lunge sliced through the darkness like a lightning strike. The group scattered, shouts echoing through the empty hospital halls. But the stranger didn't move. He stood perfectly still, watching the creature's warped motion as if every frame was slowed down inside his mind. At the very last second, he stepped aside. The doctor crashed into a metal gurney, the impact ringing like a war bell. A soldier aimed his rifle. "Shoot! Shoot!" "No," the stranger said sharply. "Noise will bring more." The doctor rose again, limbs jerking like marionette strings pulled by an unseen hand. His breathing was wet, crackling, and every exhale carried a faint mist, not from cold, but from something inside him overheating. The woman whispered, Is the virus controlling him?" "It's not control," the stranger said, circling slowly. "It's desperation. His body is trying to stay alive using anything it still has." The doctor twitched, stumbling forward, skin tearing slightly along his jawline. Veins black as ink spread further under his neck. The child clung to the stranger's coat. "Make him stop." The stranger lowered his voice. "He can't stop, but we can let him rest." He moved with precision, a single step behind the doctor, a hand at the base of the neck, a sharp twist. The body collapsed silently. The only sound left was the wind moaning through distant corridors. The soldier exhaled shakily. "We're not equipped for this." "No one is," the stranger replied. "And that is why we must keep moving." They entered deeper into the hospital. Hallways narrowed. Emergency lights flickered weakly. The smell of disinfectant mixed with rot. A sign hung crooked above them. "Isolation wing. Authorized staff only." The stranger stopped in front of it. This is where it began. The group exchanged fearful looks. "Began? What do you mean, began?" The stranger traced a gloved finger along the cracked window of the door. This outbreak didn't start in the city. It started in this building. The woman swallowed hard. Are you saying somebody made it? No, the stranger said. He pushed the door open. But someone tried to stop it and failed. The isolation wing felt like a tomb. Each step echoed too loudly, as if the hallway itself was warning them not to continue. The air was heavier here, thicker, warmer, almost breathing. The soldier swept his flashlight left and right. Why does it feel like the walls are sweating? They are, the stranger said calmly. Moisture condenses around viral blooms. This entire corridor has been exposed. The child covered his mouth instinctively. The woman pressed closer to the stranger. Then why aren't we collapsing like the others? She whispered. Because the viral load is low, he replied. For now. They reached the first room, a shattered observation window. Inside, a hospital bed overturned, restraints torn off, and deep gouges in the floor as if something had crawled, dragged itself, or been dragged out. The woman trembled. What did that? The stranger didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a scrap of torn fabric from the floor. A name tag. Dr. Valen. The soldier muttered. He was the chief researcher here, but they said he died on day 1. The stranger looked up sharply. No, he didn't die. He motioned them forward. Room after room told the same story. Beds overturned, records torn, blood smears on glass, storage cabinets empty as if ransacked by something that understood exactly what it needed. Finally, they reached the central lab. The door was locked from the inside. The stranger placed his hand on the panel. Metal groaned, then snapped. The door slid open. Inside, the lab was a frozen nightmare. Broken vials glittered on the floor. Paperwork covered in dark stains. Monitors still flickering weakly with corrupted files. And in the middle of the room, a single wheelchair facing the wall. The child whispered, Is someone there? The wheelchair shifted an inch, very slowly. The soldier lifted his rifle. The stranger raised a hand to stop him. A soft, distorted voice came from the chair. Don't. Come closer. The woman gasped. That voice. It's Dr. Valen, the soldier breathed. The stranger stepped forward carefully. Doctor, he said quietly, you're still conscious. The wheelchair turned slightly, revealing the silhouette of a man whose body had begun to collapse inward. Skin sunken, bones visible, veins glowing faintly under the surface like burning threads. Dr. Valen lifted his head with tremendous effort. You're not human, he rasped. The stranger didn't deny it. What happened here? He asked. Valen coughed, blood splattering the floor. We tried to stop it. We tried to isolate the mutation, but it evolved faster than we could think. His eyes flickered toward the child. You must leave. It's not just spreading, it's learning. The stranger's expression changed. A rare shift, heavy and grim. How long do we have? Dr. Valen's breathing rattled. Hours, maybe less. The virus is moving through the ventilation. It knows you're here. The lights flickered violently. A sound echoed through the corridor, a dragging noise, slow, heavy, wet. Getting closer. Dr. Valen whispered with the last of his strength. It's too late. It already found you. The stranger walked deeper into the quarantine ward, where the air felt heavy, almost alive, thick with the quiet agony of hundreds. Beds lined the walls, each holding a body caught between life and death. Some coughed weakly. Others stared at the ceiling with hollow, fever-drowned eyes. A few never moved at all. Every step he took stirred a ripple of whispers. Who is he? He doesn't belong here. Why isn't he afraid? A doctor approached him, exhausted and pale, his mask soaked through with sweat. Who sent you? He asked. We have no space, no medicine, no hope. The stranger answered calmly, "Hope is not what I bring. Understanding is." The doctor blinked, confused, but before he could question further, a violent cough echoed from the far corner. A young soldier convulsed on his bed, eyes bloodshot, skin turning a frightening shade of gray. Nurses rushed to him, panic rising. "He was stable an hour ago. It's accelerating." The stranger appeared beside the bed with unnatural speed, scanning the soldier's trembling body. "Mutation detected," his mind reported. The virus was changing, faster than expected. He turned to the staff around him. "You must isolate this ward immediately. No one leaves. No one enters." A nurse protested through trembling breath. "If we close the ward, we'll be trapped with it." "You already are," the stranger answered. Fear spread across their faces, not the viral kind, the human kind. Still, they obeyed. Doors slammed shut, locks clicked, lights flickered. Inside, the tension thickened into raw dread. The soldier suddenly went still. Then, he inhaled sharply, like a drowning man breaking the surface. His eyes snapped open. Black veins crawled across his skin. Someone whispered, "Dear God." The stranger stepped closer. "This is only the beginning." The ward fell silent, except for the distant sound of dozens of feverish breaths, and the growing realization that the virus was evolving faster than any of them could keep up. The stairwell vibrated with every impact on the metal door. Each hit was harder than the last, deep metallic booms that echoed up the concrete shaft. The stranger motioned them downward. "Faster. It's analyzing the structure. It will find a weak point soon." Halfway down the stairs, the soldier gasped. The virus wasn't airborne like this in 1918. Nothing spread like this. Nothing moved like that. What changed? The stranger didn't slow, didn't look back. Time changed it. Hosts changed it. You changed it. The lights inside the stairwell flickered. A cold gust spiraled down the shaft. The woman's voice trembled. "It's above us, isn't it?" The stranger didn't answer. That was the answer. A faint, skittering sound trickled down from the darkness above. Something crawling along the walls, light enough to be fast, heavy enough to shake dust loose. The child clung to the stranger's sleeve. "Is it going to catch us?" The stranger's voice was calm, controlled. "Not if you keep moving." They reached the lower landing. The soldier grabbed the railing and leaned over, peering into the vertical abyss. "It's too far down. If it corners us in here, we're trapped." The stranger stepped beside him. "We won't be trapped." Suddenly, a violent clang echoed below them. Something metallic fell from a higher floor, tumbling down the shaft, bouncing off the walls. and then it stopped mid-fall. Not naturally, as if something caught it. The soldier's face went pale. "It's on the wall." A low growl vibrated through the concrete. The stranger pushed the group toward the next set of stairs. The creature is still restructuring its body. It doesn't fully understand gravity yet. The woman stared in horror. It understands enough. They ran again, their footsteps echoing down the tight stairwell. A sudden screech tore down from above, a sharp metallic scream that vibrated their bones. The creature had dropped into the stairwell. The stranger snapped, "Move!" The soldier drew his weapon. "Just tell me where to aim." The stranger grabbed his arm. "You don't aim, you run!" A wet, heavy thud hit the landing they had just left. The creature was close now, close enough that they could hear its breathing, if it could be called breathing. Air sucked inward through something that wasn't lungs. The child stumbled. The stranger caught him instantly and pulled him forward. "We're almost there." "Where?" the soldier shouted. "The basement level. It's the only place it can't track temperature." The woman frowned through her terror. "Why the basement?" The stranger answered without looking back. "Because below ground, everything is cold." Behind them, the creature shrieked, a sound like metal twisting and bones breaking at the same time. And then it leapt. The stairwell shook. Concrete dust rained down from above. The stranger turned his head slightly and said, "It's learning our speed." The stairwell trembled as the creature hurled itself downward, slamming into the concrete steps behind them. The impact shook the entire shaft, dust clouds exploding outward like gray smoke. The soldier nearly fell. "It's right behind us!" The stranger kept his voice steady. "Keep moving! Do not look back!" The woman screamed as another thud thundered above, louder, closer, heavier. The creature's limbs scraped along the metal railing, producing a shrill sound like knives dragged over glass. The child covered his ears. "Make it stop. Please make it stop." The stranger placed a hand on his shoulder as they ran. "It will stop when we're safe. Focus on the next step." Suddenly, a twisted shadow whipped into view from the upper landing. Not a full body, just an elongated limb, jointed at unnatural angles, slamming against the railing to gauge distance. The soldier fired a shot on instinct. The blast echoed violently. "No!" the stranger snapped. The creature shrieked, an inhuman, rage-filled cry that shook the stairwell. The gunshot had revealed their exact position. The creature moved faster, much faster. The stranger pushed them downward. It's using sound triangulation now. "We need to reach the basement door, now!" The woman's breath hitched, panic rising. "How far is it?" The soldier looked back, and his face drained of color. It's climbing on the ceiling." Clinging to cracked concrete, the creature moved with horrifying spider-like motions, its limbs stretching and contorting, its head snapping toward the sound of their footsteps. A long, unnatural screech tore from its throat. The stairwell lights buzzed and flickered violently. The stranger turned sharply to the boy. "When I say run, you run faster than you've ever run." The child nodded, shaking. Another impact detonated above them. Concrete shattered, raining debris. The creature dropped one flight closer. The stranger calculated silently. 3 seconds until contact. The soldier swore loudly. "What do we do?" The stranger's answer was instant. "We separate." The woman panicked. "No, we can't." "We must," the stranger said. "It tracks heat and motion. Splitting will divide its targeting pattern." He pointed to a lower door. "You three, through that maintenance exit." The soldier shook his head. "You can't distract this thing alone." "I'm not trying to survive," the stranger replied quietly. "I'm trying to keep you alive." The creature shrieked again, closer now, almost upon them. The stranger shoved the soldier and woman toward the door. "Go!" The child hesitated. "But what about you?" For the first time, the stranger leaned in close and whispered, "I don't die the way you do." The boy's eyes widened. Before he could speak, the creature dropped from a higher floor, crashing onto the steps with bone-splitting force. The stranger turned toward it, eyes glowing faintly in the flickering light. "Come then," he said softly. "Let's finish your analysis." The stairwell fell into a suffocating silence, the kind that presses against the skull and fills the lungs with cold dread. Only two figures remained, the stranger, the creature. They stood separated by just a few steps, dim emergency lights flickering like dying candles. The creature's body unfolded slowly, as if deciding which shape best fit its hunger. Limbs cracked, extended, retracted. Bones stretching in ways no living thing should survive. Its head tilted, once, twice, observing him. The stranger didn't move. He analyzed quietly. Muscle density increased, tissue mutation accelerating, viral load beyond predicted limits. The creature let out a low, vibrating growl that resonated through the stairwell like a broken engine. Its eyes, milky, unfocused, fixed on the stranger's silhouette. Then, it charged. A blur of twisted limbs and snapping jaws. The stranger stepped aside at the very last microsecond. The creature slammed into the wall with enough force to split the concrete, sending cracks racing upward. Chunks of debris rained down. The stairwell shook. The stranger's voice remained calm. "Your movement is reactive, not predictive. I can use that." The creature turned sharply, faster than before, and lunged again. This time, its claw grazed the stranger's coat, tearing through fabric like it was wet paper. A near miss. The creature hissed, a wet, rattling sound filled with hate. The stranger backed down one step, calculating. "Your speed has doubled, strength tripled, but your balance, still unstable." The creature hurled itself forward, a violent, chaotic leap. But the stranger stayed still, and in the split second before impact he whispered, "Now I understand." He ducked. The creature overshot, colliding with the stair rail so hard the metal twisted and snapped like a toy. It fell one level down, landing in a heap of limbs and dust. Not dead, not even slowed, but confused. It rose, shaking, head twitching left and right as it tried to locate him. The stranger analyzed the pattern. "You're blind. You navigate through sound and heat, which means..." He stepped backward into darkness, his voice softened to a near-silent whisper. "I can disappear." The creature froze. For the first time, it hesitated. Then it began sniffing the air, jaw clicking open and shut, searching for a target that had vanished from its senses. The stranger remained perfectly still, breathing shallow, lowering every detectable output. The creature growled in frustration, its limbs jittering with rage. It slammed its claws into the wall, once, twice, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the concrete, but it couldn't find him. The stranger watched, analyzing. "If it cannot locate me, it will shift targets and pursue the others." His eyes dimmed, calculating possibilities. He muttered, "I must intercept first." The creature suddenly snapped its head upward, as if sensing a distant vibration. It let out a piercing shriek, then crawled up the wall like a massive insect, racing toward the maintenance exit where the humans fled. The stranger stepped out of the shadows. "Target has changed. I need to move." And he sprinted after it. The hospital corridors were quieter now, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind that settles after a scream, heavy, trembling, waiting for the next sound to shatter it. The stranger walked slowly, each step echoing through the dim light. Every corner smelled of disinfectant, fear, and something older. Something the world had forgotten until now. Behind him, the survivors followed in silence. No one dared to speak. They had seen too much, and yet they knew the nightmare wasn't finished. A nurse whispered, "Is it over?" The stranger didn't stop walking. "No, this virus is not behaving as predicted. Something else is guiding it." They turned a corner. The walls were scratched, deep, jagged lines like claws dragging through concrete. A bed lay overturned, the window blinds torn. One of the survivors swallowed hard. What did that thing want? The stranger paused. It wasn't hunting you. It was spreading you. Human contact multiplies its evolution. A cold shiver ran through the hall. Then, a distant rumble shook the vents above them. Not loud, not violent, but alive. The group froze. The stranger tilted his head slightly, listening. New signatures detected, he murmured. Multiple, faster, stronger. A woman's voice cracked. Are you telling us this is getting worse? He finally turned to face them, not with comfort, but with a truth they weren't ready to hear. You're standing at the beginning of a chain reaction. What comes next will rewrite survival itself. Silence. A child began to cry softly. His mother held him close. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. The stranger looked toward the stairwell. We need to keep moving. If we stay here, the virus will stay with us. A man asked, Where are we going? To the rooftop, the stranger said. We need air, we need space, and we need to see how far the world has already fallen. The survivors exchanged frightened looks, but they followed. Footsteps echoed as they began climbing. Slow, exhausted, but driven by a sliver of hope. Behind them, the hallway they'd just left, filled with a slow, wet dragging sound. Something was crawling out of the vent. And as they disappeared up the stairwell, that sound followed them like a promise. The real horror hadn't even started. The stairwell spiraled upward in tight, suffocating circles. Each step groaned beneath their weight, as if the building itself wanted to warn them, to turn back, to run, to hide. But there was nowhere left to hide. The stranger moved first, silent and precise. Every few steps he paused, listening. Not for footsteps, but for breathing. Because the infected didn't always walk. Sometimes they crawled. Halfway up, a woman stumbled. Her hand brushed the railing, leaving a streak of sweat. Don't touch the metal, the stranger said sharply. She froze. Why? Because the virus survives for hours on cold surfaces. Everyone jerked their hands away instantly, fear spiking through the cramped stairwell. A man whispered, This thing has rules we don't even know! The stranger didn't answer. Because he sensed something they didn't. A faint warmth in the air, a shift in pressure, a vibration in the iron steps beneath their feet. Then, a muffled thud echoed below them. Another, then another. The woman clutched her chest. Someone's coming up. No, the stranger said quietly. Not someone. The survivor at the back of the group began breathing too fast. Oh God. Oh God. It followed us. It followed us up the stairs. Move, the stranger ordered. Now! They climbed faster, boots slamming against metal, breaths growing ragged. Something below scraped the concrete. A body dragged itself upward, bones cracking with every motion. It didn't scream. It didn't growl. It only breathed. A heavy, rattling sound like lungs filling with broken glass. The child looked back and whimpered. It's behind us. I know, the stranger said. And it's evolving. They burst through the rooftop door, slamming it shut behind them. The stranger locked it with an iron bar, pressing his hand against the cold metal. The breathing continued on the other side. Slow, steady, too steady. The man stepped back in panic. It's waiting. Yes, the stranger replied. That's what frightens me. The survivors gathered on the rooftop. Wind blasted their faces, carrying the cold bite of winter. And something else. Smoke. Distant fires burned across the city. Sirens wailed in different directions, cutting through the air like screams. The woman looked over the edge, horrified. The whole city, It's spreading everywhere. The stranger finally spoke the truth he had been calculating silently. This is no longer an outbreak. It's a transition, one of them choked out. Transition into what? He looked at them with something almost like sorrow. A new dominant form of life. The wind howled. The door behind them shuddered under a violent strike. Another. The stranger turned toward the group. We don't have much time. And the rooftop trembled, as if something below was preparing to tear its way out. The rooftop groaned beneath the weight of the storm forming overhead. Cold air whipped across the concrete, carrying dust, ash, and the distant echo of sirens dying across the city. The survivors huddled together, shivering, not from the cold, but from the knowledge that something was climbing toward them, one floor at a time. The stranger stood at the edge of the roof, coat snapping in the wind, eyes scanning the burning skyline. Below them, the rooftop door rattled violently. Thud, another thud. But this time, the door didn't shake from random hits. It shook in a pattern, rhythmic, measured, calculated. One of the survivors whispered, "Why does it sound like that? They don't think. They don't plan." The stranger didn't look away from the horizon. They didn't, but they do now. A terrified breath escaped the woman's lips. "You mean, the virus is learning?" "It's not a virus anymore," the stranger said quietly. "It's a system, adapting, optimizing." The child tugged at his sleeve. "Like you?" For the first time, the stranger hesitated. Then, boom! The rooftop door buckled inward, bending from the center as if something behind it had grown stronger, denser, smarter. The soldier raised his rifle. "Just give the word." "No guns," the stranger snapped. "The noise will bring every infected in a half-mile radius." "Then what do we do?" The stranger turned slowly, his voice strangely calm. "We buy time." Wind roared across the rooftop. Below them, something scraped metal. A hand, or claws, or something between both. The survivors stepped back. The city below was collapsing in real time. Traffic lights blinked through smoke. Cars burned in crooked lines. Windows flickered with silhouettes moving unnaturally. A last desperate question broke the silence. "Is anyone left out there?" The stranger closed his eyes for a brief moment, listening, sensing, calculating. Then he answered, "Yes, but not for long." Behind him, the rooftop door split down the middle as something began pulling it apart with slow, deliberate strength. The stranger looked at the survivors. "Stay behind me. What comes through that door isn't the same species that walked into this hospital." And the final bolt snapped. The night deepened over Boston, but the city did not sleep. Lights flickered in windows like trembling breaths, and the cold wind carried the sound of distant coughing, as if the entire world were exhaling its last moments. The stranger walked through an alley where snow mixed with ash. Every step echoed, soft, deliberate, almost mournful. The virus shimmered in the air around him, a silent predator, passing from breath to breath, house to house. He paused. His sensors detected something, not just infection, but acceleration. The virus had mutated, faster, sharper, hungrier. Inside a cramped building, a woman collapsed. Her husband screamed her name, and neighbors backed away as if death itself stood in the doorway. The stranger pushed through the frightened crowd. "You can't help her! She's finished! Stay back! This is the devil's work!" He ignored the shouts, knelt beside the woman, and scanned her trembling face. Her pulse was fading like a dying ember. He whispered, not to her, but to the world itself. "This is no longer mere illness. This is evolution." A boy hiding behind the stairwell asked in a trembling voice, Can we beat it?" The stranger looked at him, and for the first time, his voice carried something close to sorrow. "Yes, but not as you are now." Outside, panic spread like flames. Church bells rang in desperation. Medical tents overflowed. Bodies were carried through the streets under sheets, stacked in wagons heading toward mass graves. The stranger stepped back outside, watching the chaos spiral like a storm he couldn't fully contain. Humanity was splintering, some clinging to faith, some drowning in fear, some lashing out in anger. Everywhere he went, eyes filled with suspicion followed him. Who is he? Why does he never get sick? What is he hiding? And then the question whispered like poison. Is he the one who brought this? A spark of hatred now danced beside the virus. The stranger sensed it all, the fear, the rage, the growing hunger for someone to blame, someone to burn, someone to sacrifice to their terror. He spoke to himself, his voice nearly drowned by sirens and sobs. If they turn on me again, progress ends, and the world will fall. But he kept moving, because saving humanity had never been about comfort, only necessity. The wind carried the echo of church drums calling the masses to gather, calling them to choose sides. History was beginning to bend, pressure was rising, and the stranger knew. The next hours would decide whether humanity clung to hope or surrendered to the darkness. The city had fallen into a strange, trembling silence. Hospitals overflowed, streets were lined with abandoned carts, and the sky itself seemed darker, as if it feared what was coming next. The stranger stood on the rooftop of a half-ruined building, watching the chaos below, not with panic, not with anger, but with the cold understanding of a being who had seen this pattern in history before. He whispered to himself, "Fear spreads faster than any virus." Below him, soldiers argued about quarantines. Doctors shouted for supplies. Families cried from windows, begging for help that never came. The world wasn't just collapsing from the disease. It was collapsing from disbelief. A sudden explosion echoed in the distance. A hospital wing set on fire by desperate citizens who feared the infected more than death itself. The stranger closed his eyes. His mission was nearly complete. But completing a mission didn't mean winning. A child's voice rose behind him. "You're leaving, aren't you?" He turned. The same boy who once begged him to save his mother now looked older, haunted but alive. "You survived," the stranger said. "Because of you," the boy replied. "Everyone who listened to you lived. Ama, Shimdenolachak." The stranger looked at the burning horizon. "This is only one battle," he said softly. "Humanity must fight the rest." The boy swallowed. "Will you come back?" The stranger stepped into the swirling fog gathering behind him, the air bending just like the day he arrived. "When the next shadow rises," he whispered, "you'll see me again." And then he was gone. The wind carried the last echo of his voice across the dying city, as if history itself were marking this moment. Humanity survived the virus. But the darkness that lives inside people, the fear, the chaos, the blindness, that battle had only just begun. Thank you for stepping into the shadows of history with us. The story doesn't end here, it only grows darker from this point on. If you want to witness the next chapter, subscribe, stay close, and keep your eyes on the darkness. Because the stranger has vanished, but the next threat hasn't. History will break again, not by plague, not by war, but by something humanity created with its own hands. A slow heartbeat echoes. Snow falls over a deserted street. A silhouette moves in the fog. The next catastrophe will not arrive from the past. It will be born in the future. Fade to black, a distorted whisper, and the shadow is already watching. If you watch this far, you're one of the few who sees the shadows behind history. The next disaster is already moving in the dark, and when the world breaks again, you'll be here to witness it.